She offered her shoes for a piece of cake. The millionaire's reaction was emotional. A barefoot girl stops a man with more money than empathy. Her quiet sacrifice shakes his foundation to the core. What follows isn't charity, it's redemption through resistance. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. Michael Parker stepped out of Bellini's bakery, clutching an expensive cake box. He checked his watch, another 15 minutes before his next meeting. The cool autumn breeze ruffled his perfectly pressed suit as he calculated the remaining tasks for the day. As Chief Financial Officer of Horizon Technologies, his life was measured in quarterly reports, strategic planning sessions, and profit margins. The cake was for his assistant's birthday, a perfunctory gesture that his executive coach had suggested would improve team morale. His thoughts were interrupted by a small figure appearing before him. A girl, no older than 12, stood on the sidewalk with bare feet, despite the October chill. Her expression wasn't pleading or desperate. Instead, she looked at him with a dignified determination that seemed out of place on such a young face. "Sir," she said, her voice clear and unwavering, "would you trade some food for these?" She held up a pair of worn sneakers. "My brother hasn't eaten since yesterday." Michael was accustomed to brushing past street solicitations with practiced indifference, but something about her direct approach, offering something in exchange rather than begging, made him pause. The girl's face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes were clear and intelligent. Behind her, partially hidden in the alley beside the bakery, a small boy peered out, his thin face watchful. "You want to trade shoes for food?" Michael asked, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "Yes, sir, they're still good shoes." She presented them formally like merchandise. "The soles are solid, just a little worn on top." Michael looked at the shoes, then at the girl's bare feet, reddened from the cold pavement. Something shifted inside him, a tectonically small movement that nevertheless changed the entire landscape of his emotional geography. "Where are your parents?" he asked, his voice gentler than he'd intended. The girl's expression hardened slightly. "Our grandmother took care of us. She's gone now." Michael nodded, understanding what she wasn't saying. "Wait here," he said. Inside Bellini's, he ordered sandwiches, pastries, hot chocolate, and several bottles of water. The cashier raised her eyebrows at the second order coming so quickly after his cake purchase. "Beautiful day to have a picnic," she commented cheerfully. Michael nodded absently, his mind still on the girl's face and her offer, the absolute dignity of it. Outside, the children remained exactly where he had left them, as if they hadn't dared move. The boy had emerged from the alley and stood close to his sister. Michael noticed his wheezing breath and the flush on his cheeks that didn't look healthy. "Here," Michael said, handing over the bags of food. "This should help for now." The girl examined the contents briefly, then nodded with formal gratitude. "Thank you, sir." "Keep your shoes," Michael added. "You need them." The boy approached cautiously and accepted a pastry his sister offered him. As he took a bite, his face transformed with simple joy. The girl maintained her composure, but Michael saw her swallow hard. "Where are you staying?" Michael asked. The girl hesitated, instinctive caution warring with the need for help. "Around," she finally answered. Michael should have continued to his meeting. The rational part of his brain, the part that had guided him through Harvard Business School and up the corporate ladder, was already calculating how to extract himself from this situation. Call social services, perhaps make a donation to a children's charity, and move on with his structured life. Instead, he found himself saying, "My name is Michael. What's yours?" "I'm Emma," the girl said after a moment's consideration. "This is my brother, Liam." Liam looked up at the sound of his name, cream from the pastry on his upper lip. He tried to smile but was interrupted by a harsh cough that shook his small frame. "He needs medicine," Emma said, a crack appearing in her stoic facade. "He's been sick for 3 days." Michael checked his watch again. His meeting with potential investors was starting in 7 minutes. He had prepared for weeks. The projection slides were meticulously crafted, the talking points memorized. His promotion to COO hinged on this deal. "There's a clinic 2 blocks from here," he heard himself say, pointing east. "Would you let me take you there for your brother?" Emma's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "We don't have money for doctors." "I'll take care of it," Michael said. He took out his business card and handed it to her. "You can check me out, I'm legitimate." Emma studied the embossed card, then looked up at Michael's face, assessing him with a shrewdness beyond her years. She glanced at her brother, whose coughing had subsided, but who was now shivering slightly despite the mild day. "Okay," she finally agreed, "but we stay together, always." "Of course," Michael said, already dialing his assistant. "Nancy, reschedule the Westridge meeting. Family emergency." Family emergency. The words felt foreign in his mouth. At 42, Michael had no family to speak of. His parents retired in Arizona, no siblings, a string of relationships that dissolved when work inevitably took precedence. His apartment was a minimalist showcase featured in a design magazine, beautiful, ordered, and devoid of any evidence that someone actually lived there. The urgent care clinic was bright and sterile. Emma kept a protective arm around Liam as they sat in the waiting area. Michael filled out forms, leaving blank spaces where he didn't have answers. When the nurse practitioner finally saw them, her expression grew concerned as she listened to Liam's lungs. "Early pneumonia," she diagnosed. "He needs antibiotics immediately and possibly breathing treatments. I'd like to transfer him to Children's Hospital for observation." "No," Emma said immediately, panic flashing across her face. "We can't be separated." The nurse looked at Michael questioningly. "Are you their father?" Michael hesitated for only a second. "I'm responsible for them right now." "So we need to discuss their situation," the nurse said quietly, gesturing toward a private corner. Michael followed, already sensing what was coming. "I'm required to contact Child Protective Services," she explained. "These children appear to be without proper guardianship." Michael nodded. "I understand, but they're terrified of being separated. Is there any way Liam can be treated without hospitalization?" The nurse assessed him carefully. "Are you offering to take responsibility for his care?" The question hung in the air. Michael, who weighed every business decision with careful analysis of risk and reward, who never acted impulsively, who had built his reputation on measured rationality, found himself nodding. "Yes," he said, "I am." 3 hours later, they left, with prescriptions, follow-up appointments, and a temporary emergency guardianship form that Michael had signed after a brief interview with a social worker. It was a stopgap measure, a 72-hour authorization that would give him time to figure out what to do next. As they walked toward the parking garage where Michael had left his car, Emma finally asked the question that had clearly been on her mind. "Why are you helping us?" Michael considered this as they waited for the elevator. Why indeed? His life had been carefully constructed to maximize efficiency and achievement. Children had never figured into his plans. He barely knew how to interact with his co-workers' kids at the annual company picnic. "Because you offered your shoes for food," he finally said. "Because you put your brother first, because some things are more important than meetings." In the elevator, Liam's small hand slipped into Michael's. The simple gesture of trust sent a jolt through him, unlike anything he'd felt before. The boy looked up at him with feverish eyes, but managed a real smile this time. "Where are we going now?" Emma asked, still guarded but no longer openly suspicious. Michael realized he hadn't thought this far ahead. His spacious downtown penthouse wasn't set up for children. There were no extra beds, no food suitable for kids, nothing but expensive furniture and empty spaces. "First, we'll get Liam's prescription filled," he said. "Then we'll go to my place to regroup. You can both get cleaned up, have a proper meal, and we'll figure out next steps. Is that okay?" Emma nodded cautiously. "As long as we stay together." "I promise," Michael said, suddenly understanding the weight of those 2 simple words. "You'll stay together." As they walked to his car, Michael's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from work. For the first time in his career, he didn't immediately check them. Instead, he helped Liam into the back seat, making sure his seatbelt was secure. Something fundamental had shifted in Michael's carefully ordered world. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring or how he would manage this situation, But watching Emma finally relax enough to close her eyes as they drove, seeing Liam's breathing ease slightly as the medicine began to work, Michael felt a strange certainty grow within him. He was exactly where he needed to be. Michael's penthouse looked different through the eyes of the children. What had seemed sleek and sophisticated now appeared cold and impractical. Emma surveyed the white furniture and glass tables with visible concern, as if calculating the likelihood of accidentally breaking something valuable. Liam simply looked overwhelmed, his small form dwarfed by the expansive living room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "You can sit down," Michael said, gesturing to the sofa. "Make yourselves comfortable." Emma carefully guided Liam to the edge of the pristine white couch. They perched there like birds ready to take flight at the slightest disturbance. "Are you hungry?" Michael asked, suddenly aware of how inadequate his kitchen would be for children. He maintained a minimalist diet, protein shakes for breakfast, salads delivered for lunch, occasional dinners at high-end restaurants with clients. "Yes, sir," Emma answered with the same dignified formality she'd shown from the beginning. Michael opened his refrigerator to find exactly what he expected: almond milk, cold brew coffee, a protein bar, and 3 containers of meal-prepped chicken and vegetables. He closed it and turned to the children. "How about we order something? Pizza? Burgers?" Liam's eyes widened slightly, but he looked to his sister before reacting. "Pizza would be nice," Emma said carefully, "if it's not too much trouble." While waiting for the delivery, Michael showed them to the guest bathroom with its rainfall shower and complicated array of toiletries. "There are clean towels in the cabinet," he said. "Take whatever you need." Emma nodded, still clutching the small backpack she'd been carrying. Michael had noticed how she kept it close, never setting it down even at the clinic. "I'll find some clothes you can change into," he added. In his bedroom, Michael rummaged through drawers until he found a seldom-worn Harvard t-shirt that might work as a nightgown for Emma and a cashmere sweater that Liam could use until they got proper clothes. The absurdity of the situation struck him as he laid these adult items on the guest bed. He was completely unprepared for this responsibility. His phone rang again. Nancy, his assistant, for the 5th time. "Michael, where are you?" "The investors are furious. Gregory's asking if you've had some kind of breakdown." "I'm handling a personal emergency," Michael replied, keeping his voice low. "I need you to reschedule all my meetings for the next 3 days." "3 days?" Nancy's voice rose in disbelief. "Michael, we're in the middle of the quarter. The board meeting is on Thursday." "I'm aware of the timing," he said. "Something important has come up. I'll work remotely as much as possible, but I need these 3 days." After ending the call, Michael sat on the edge of his bed, trying to process the day's events. What was he doing? He knew nothing about caring for children, let alone children who had clearly experienced significant trauma. The rational course would be to contact Child Protective Services in the morning and let the proper authorities handle the situation. Yet the image of Emma's face when the nurse mentioned separation haunted him. He recognized the fierce protectiveness in her eyes, the absolute determination to keep her brother safe. It resonated with something deep inside him that he hadn't acknowledged in years. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. The pizza had arrived. In the kitchen, he found plates and napkins, setting them on the sleek marble counter. When Emma and Liam emerged from the bathroom, they looked marginally better. Their faces were clean, hair damp from the shower. Liam's cough still sounded worrisome, but the flush in his cheeks had diminished. They ate quietly at first, the children taking small, careful bites despite their obvious hunger. Michael realized they were restraining themselves, perhaps unsure if this bounty might suddenly be taken away. "You can have as much as you want," he assured them. "There's plenty." Liam needed no further encouragement, reaching eagerly for a second slice. Emma maintained her composure, but Michael noticed her shoulders relax slightly. "How long have you been on your own?" Michael asked gently. Emma considered her answer carefully. "Our grandmother went away 3 weeks ago. She was sick for a long time before that." "And your parents?" "Mom left when Liam was a baby," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Dad He couldn't take care of us. Michael nodded, understanding the subtext. And no other family? Emma shook her head. Grandma was it. We stayed in our apartment as long as we could, she continued, her voice steady, but her eyes fixed on her plate. Then the manager came and said we had to go because the rent wasn't paid. We took what we could carry. Michael glanced at the worn backpack beside her chair, an entire life reduced to what a 12-year-old could carry. And you've been on the street since then? Emma nodded. We stayed in the park for a while, then under the bridge by the river, but Liam got sick, so we came back to the city to find help. You've done an amazing job taking care of him, Michael said, genuine admiration in his voice. A flicker of surprise crossed Emma's face, as if she wasn't accustomed to receiving praise. He's my brother, she said simply, as if that explained everything. And in a way it did. Later, as the children settled into the guest room, Liam already half asleep on the king-sized bed, Emma vigilant beside him, Michael made a series of calls from his home office. First to his attorney, Catherine Wong, waking her despite the late hour. I need information on emergency guardianship, he explained, ignoring her confusion. How do I keep two siblings together when the system might want to separate them? Next to a colleague whose wife worked in family services, asking questions about the process, the pitfalls, what to expect. Finally, to a home goods delivery service, placing a rush order for children's necessities, clothes, shoes, toiletries, even a few toys, to be delivered first thing in the morning. When he finally checked on the children again, he found them both asleep. Liam was curled against his sister, his breathing still raspy but more regular than before. Emma had positioned herself between her brother and the door, one arm protectively draped over him. Even in sleep, she remained on guard. The sight stirred. Something in Michael that he'd long buried, a memory of himself at 10, watching over his mother during one of her bad spells, as his father called them. The crushing responsibility of trying to protect someone when you were just a child yourself. He had escaped that life through sheer determination, throwing himself into academics, securing scholarships, building a fortress of achievement, and financial security. Somewhere along the way, he had sealed off that part of himself, the vulnerable boy who had once known what it meant to be afraid and alone. Morning arrived with a flurry of deliveries and phone calls. Michael had slept on the couch, unwilling to retreat to his bedroom and leave the children alone in an unfamiliar place. He woke to find Emma standing in the living room, silently watching the sunrise over the city skyline. "Good morning," he said. She turned, automatically checking on her brother before responding. "Good morning, sir." "Just Michael is fine," he said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "How's Liam?" "Still sleeping. His cough is better." The doorbell rang, announcing the first delivery. Emma tensed immediately. "It's okay," Michael assured her. "I ordered some things for you both." The deliveries kept coming, clothing in approximately their sizes, shoes, backpacks, toiletries, books, and a tablet for educational games. Emma watched with growing bewilderment as the items accumulated. "Why are you doing all this?" she finally asked. Michael paused, considering his answer carefully. In the corporate world, he always knew exactly why he was taking any action. The strategic purpose, the expected outcome, the measurable benefit. But this defied his usual logic. "Because you need help," he said simply. "And I can provide it." Emma's expression remained skeptical. "But you don't know us." "I'm getting to know you," Michael replied. "And in the meantime, you need a safe place to stay, clothes that fit, and medicine for your brother." As if summoned, by mention of his name, Liam appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. When he spotted the array of packages, his whole demeanor changed. "Are those for us?" he asked, his voice raspy but excited. "They are," Michael confirmed. "Why don't you and your sister see what fits?" While the children explored their new possessions, Michael made another call, this time to his boss. "Gregory, I need to take a personal leave," he said without preamble, 2 weeks starting immediately. The response was predictably explosive. In 15 years with the company, Michael had never taken more than 3 consecutive days off. "This is completely unacceptable," Gregory spluttered. We're in the middle of the Westridge negotiations. The board presentation is Thursday. You can't possibly... I can send Nancy the Westridge materials this afternoon, Michael interrupted, and I'll video conference for the board meeting. But I need these 2 weeks. For what? What could possibly be more important than the future of this company right now? Michael watched as Emma helped Liam try on a new sweater. Her movements gentle, despite her own obvious excitement over a pair of sturdy new boots. The future of 2 children, Michael answered quietly. I'll call you tomorrow with updates. When he hung up, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the lightness that comes with choosing your own priorities rather than having them dictated by external demands. Everything okay? Emma asked, noticing his expression. Better than okay, Michael said. Now, who's ready? For breakfast. There's a diner down the street that makes great pancakes. Liam's face lit up, but Emma remained cautious. What happens after breakfast, she asked. What's the plan? It was the question Michael had been asking himself all night. The temporary guardianship would expire in 2 days. Then what? The plan, he said with more confidence than he felt, is to make sure you 2 stay together and safe. I'm working on the details. People always want to separate us, Emma said, her voice hardening. They say it's easier to place 1 child than 2. I won't let that happen, Michael promised. And in that moment he realized he meant it more than any promise he'd ever made. The social worker's name was Diane Reeves, and she had the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much, but hadn't yet surrendered to cynicism. She sat across from Michael in the downtown office of Child Protective Services, reviewing the paperwork he had filed that morning. Mr. Parker, she said, looking up from the forms, I appreciate your concern for these children, but you need to understand what you're proposing here. I'm proposing to keep them together and safe, Michael replied. From what I understand, that's not always guaranteed in the system. Diane's expression softened slightly. You're right about that. Sibling separation is unfortunately common, especially with the current shortage of foster homes. But temporary guardianship isn't a simple process, especially for someone with no prior relationship to the children. I've initiated the process already, Michael said, sliding over the preliminary paperwork his attorney had prepared. I can provide a stable home, financial security, and I'm willing to undergo whatever background checks and home studies are required. And you're aware this is typically a lengthy process? Months, not days. I am. And your work. I understand you're a high-level executive. That typically means long hours, travel. I've taken a leave of absence, Michael said, and I'm prepared to make permanent adjustments to my schedule moving forward. Diane studied him for a long moment. Mr. Parker, forgive my directness, but what's your interest here? These children were strangers to you 4 days ago. Now you're rearranging your entire life for them. It was a fair question, one that Michael had been asking himself since that moment outside the bakery. How could he explain the profound shift that had occurred within him, the strange certainty that had taken root? Sometimes we find purpose in unexpected places, he finally said. Emma and Liam need someone who will put them first. I can be that person. And if their father reappears, or other relatives come forward, then we'll address that appropriately, but right now they need stability. Diane nodded slowly. I'll need to interview the children separately and conduct a home study. Your background check is already in process. Of course, whatever's necessary. When Michael returned to the waiting area, he found Emma sitting rigidly in a plastic chair, her eyes fixed on a door across the room where Liam was being interviewed. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the chair's armrests. They're separating us, she said when she saw Michael, panic edging into her voice. No, Michael assured her, sitting beside her. They're just talking to him alone so he can speak. Freely, it's standard procedure. That's how it starts, Emma insisted. First separate interviews, then separate placements. That's what happened to Jasmine and her brother at school. Michael gently placed his hand over hers. Emma, look at me. I promised you would stay together, and I meant it. I have an excellent attorney, financial resources, and I'm not giving up. This is just the beginning of the process. The door opened, and Liam emerged with a social worker who wasn't Diane. The boy looked small and uncertain until he spotted Emma and Michael. His face brightened immediately as he hurried over. "I told them about the pizza and the new clothes," he said to Emma, "and how Michael helped with my medicine." Emma's tension visibly decreased as she checked her brother for any signs of distress. Finding none, she turned to the social worker who had escorted him. "Is it my turn now?" she asked with resigned determination. "Yes," the woman answered kindly. "Just a few questions, Emma." As Emma disappeared behind the door, Michael felt a tug on his sleeve. "Are we going to stay with you?" Liam asked, his eyes wide and hopeful. "I'm doing everything I can to make that happen," Michael replied carefully. "There are rules and processes we have to follow, but that's my goal." "Emma says you're rich," Liam said with the directness of children. "She says rich people usually get what they want." Michael smiled ruefully. "Sometimes. But some things are more complicated than money can solve." The home study took place the following day. Michael had spent the evening before attempting to make his penthouse more child-friendly, with limited success. The sleek, minimalist space simply wasn't designed for young occupants. Ms. Reeves walked through each room, making notes on her tablet. Her expression remained neutral, but Michael could sense her assessment wasn't entirely positive. "You have plenty of space," she commented, as they returned to the living room, where Emma and Liam were reading on the couch. "But children need more than square footage, Mr. Parker." "I'm aware of that," Michael said. "I'm prepared to make whatever changes are necessary." "It's not just about physical changes," Diane said quietly, leading him toward the kitchen for privacy. "It's about creating a home that reflects continuity for these children, not erasing their past. Where are their belongings, their mementos?" Michael hesitated. "They didn't have much when I found them, just a backpack with some clothes." "But that backpack represents their life before you," Diane pointed out. "Children need connection to their history, even when it's painful. It's part of their identity." Michael considered this, remembering how carefully Emma guarded that worn backpack. "I understand. What do you suggest?" "Don't rush to replace everything old with new. Ask them what matters to them, what they want to keep, what reminds them of their grandmother. Build on their foundation rather than constructing an entirely new one." It was sound advice, and exactly the kind of nuanced emotional consideration that had never been Michael's strength. He excelled at strategic planning and resource allocation, not at nurturing emotional well-being. After Diane left, promising to be in touch within days about the temporary guardianship extension, Michael found Emma in the guest room, carefully organizing their new clothes. "Emma," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "can we talk about your backpack?" She immediately tensed. "I'm keeping it." "Of course you are," Michael assured her. "I just wondered if there are things in there, important things, that you'd like to have out where you can see them. Photos, maybe? Keepsakes from your grandmother?" Emma studied him suspiciously for a moment before reaching for the backpack. From its depths, she withdrew a tattered photo album, a handwritten recipe book, and a small music box. "These were Grandma's," she said softly. "And this?" She pulled out a ragged stuffed rabbit. "This is Liam's. I told him we had to leave it behind because we needed room for important things, but I kept it for him anyway." Michael felt something catch in his throat. These are exactly the kind of important things that should be out where you can enjoy them. Would you like to put them somewhere special? That evening, they created a small memory shelf in the living room. The photo album opened to show their grandmother's smile. The recipe book propped up beside it. The music box played a tinkling melody that made Liam's eyes light up with recognition. "She used to play this while making cookies," he explained, the memory bringing a rare smile to his face. Michael observed the transformation in the children as these small pieces of their past found a place in their present. It was a subtle but profound shift, the beginning of trust, perhaps even hope. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. Michael's phone rang while he was making breakfast, scrambled eggs that Emma was patiently teaching him how to cook properly. "Mr. Parker, this is Diane Reeves. I'm afraid we've encountered an issue with your guardianship application." Michael's stomach tightened. "What kind of issue?" "We've received an anonymous complaint suggesting you may have inappropriate motives for taking in the children. It's standard procedure for us to investigate any such claims. Inappropriate. Michael couldn't even finish the sentence. Shock and anger rendering him momentarily speechless. That's absurd. I believe you, Mr. Parker, but I have to follow protocol. This will delay the process while we conduct a more thorough investigation. After hanging up, Michael stood motionless in the kitchen, the spatula still in his hand. Emma watched him with growing concern. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Just a complication with the paperwork," Michael said, forcing a reassuring tone. "Nothing. We can't handle." But later that day, when the children were absorbed in a movie, Michael called Catherine Wong and explained the situation. "This is serious, Michael," Catherine said. "Anonymous. Complaints like this can derail even the most straightforward guardianship cases. We need to find out who filed it and why." "How do we do that?" "I have contacts in the department. Let me make some calls." 2 days later, Catherine arrived at Michael's penthouse with news. "The complaint came from Sharon Daniels," she said, handing Michael a file. "Former HR director at your company, terminated last year after you reported financial irregularities in her department." Michael remembered the woman, bitter and vindictive after her dismissal. "She's targeting me through the children? That's despicable." "It gets worse," Catherine continued. "She's apparently made similar anonymous complaints about 3 other single men seeking foster care or adoption approval. It's a pattern." "Can we prove it?" "We can. I've spoken with the other men's attorneys. They're willing to provide statements about their cases, and I've initiated a counter-complaint regarding malicious reporting." Michael ran a hand through his hair, relief mingling with lingering anger. "So this won't stop the guardianship?" "It will delay it," Catherine admitted, "but I'm confident we can overcome it. In the meantime, I've arranged for a child welfare advocate to visit and provide an independent assessment. Her report could help counteract the complaint." The advocate, Jessica Lynn, arrived the following afternoon. She spent hours observing Michael with the children, asking gentle questions and taking notes. Unlike Diane's formal assessment, Jessica's approach was more conversational, putting both Emma and Liam at ease. During a quiet moment when the children were in another room, Jessica turned to Michael. "They trust you," she said simply, "especially the boy. But Emma's coming around too." "She's been their protector for so long," Michael replied. "It's hard for her to surrender that role." Jessica nodded. "That's common with parentified children. They've had to grow up too quickly, take on responsibilities beyond their years. The challenge now is to let her be a child again, without making her feel like she's failing her brother." "How do I do that?" "Include her in decisions, but take the weight of them off her shoulders. Acknowledge her expertise about her brother, while gradually assuming the parental responsibilities yourself." It was insightful advice, the kind that made Michael realize just how much he had to learn about parenting traumatized children. That evening, as he helped Liam with a simple reading exercise recommended by Jessica, his phone rang again. It was Gregory, his boss. "Michael, this has gone on long enough. The Westridge deal is stalling without your direct involvement. Whatever personal crisis you're having needs to be resolved now. I need you back in the office tomorrow." Michael looked at Liam, who was sounding out words with fierce concentration, and at Emma, who was pretending not to listen while arranging books on a nearby shelf. "That won't be possible, Gregory." "Excuse me?" "I said that won't be possible. I'm in the middle of something important. More important than your career, than the company you've helped build for 15 years? Michael considered the question seriously. 2 weeks ago, nothing had seemed more important than his career trajectory, the next promotion, the corner office with the better view. "Yes," he said simply, "more important than all of that." "Then I'll accept your resignation, effective immediately." Michael had expected this ultimatum, had even prepared for it financially. Still, hearing the words sent a jolt through him, the severing of a significant part of his identity. "If that's your decision, I understand. I'll have my formal resignation letter to you by tomorrow." After hanging up, Michael felt a strange mixture of anxiety and liberation. He had just walked away from a 7-figure salary and the career he'd spent decades building. By any rational measure, it was madness. "Did you just lose your job because of us?" Emma's voice came from behind him, small but steady. Michael turned, to find her watching him with an unreadable expression. "I just chose a different path," he corrected gently. "And it's not because of you, it's because of me. Because of what matters to me now. But what will you do?" Her practical nature couldn't help but worry about logistics. "I have savings," Michael assured her, "and other opportunities will come along, the right kind that allow me to be here for you both." Emma studied him for a long moment, seeming to search for something in his face. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she nodded once, decisively. "Liam needs help." "With the word through," she said. "He always gets stuck on the sounds." "I'll help him," Michael promised, understanding that in her own way, Emma was beginning to share her responsibilities with him, the first fragile thread of a new kind of trust. 3 months later, Michael stood in the kitchen of a house he didn't recognize, his own. Gone was the sleek, magazine-worthy penthouse with its austere minimalism. In its place was a 4-bedroom craftsman in a tree-lined neighborhood with good schools and a park within walking distance. The kitchen island was cluttered with homework papers, art supplies, and half-assembled lunch containers. A refrigerator, once barren except for protein shakes, now displayed spelling tests, a weekly chore chart, and photographs held by whimsical magnets. Michael smiled at the chaos, a visible representation of how thoroughly his life had been transformed. "Emma, we need to leave in 15 minutes, he called up the stairs. "Ms. Reeves will be here at 10. Today was important, the final home study before the court hearing that would formalize his guardianship. After months of legal maneuvering, background checks, parenting classes, and psychological evaluations, they were approaching the finish line. Liam appeared in the kitchen doorway, his Batman backpack secured and ready. At 8, he was still, small for his age, but the persistent cough had finally disappeared and his cheeks had filled out with healthy color. "Is today the day we find out if we can stay forever?" he asked, helping himself to an apple from the fruit bowl. "Not quite," Michael explained, checking his watch. "Today is the last visit before the judge makes that decision next week." Liam considered this while crunching his apple. "But you think the judge will say yes, right?" "I do," Michael answered honestly. "Catherine says we have a very strong case." Emma descended the stairs, her expression serious as it always was before meetings with social workers. At 12, she carried herself with the composure of someone much older, though Michael had begun to see flashes of childlike joy breaking through her protective facade. "I organized our medical records in the blue folder," she said, placing it on the counter. "And the school reports are in the green one." Michael smiled at her thoroughness. "Thank you, that's very helpful. I also wrote down Liam's new medication schedule since they changed the dosage last week." "Perfect," Michael said. "But remember, Emma, this is my responsibility now. You don't have to manage all of this anymore." She nodded, though relinquishing control remained difficult for her. "I know. I just want everything to be right for the visit." "It will be," Michael assured her. "We've got this." The doorbell rang precisely at 10. Diane Reeves stood on the porch, tablet in hand, her expression professional but not unfriendly. "Good morning, Mr. Parker. Emma, Liam." The children greeted her politely, well practiced in the routine of these visits. After preliminary pleasantries, Diane began her inspection of the house. Michael and the children followed, answering questions and demonstrating their new family rhythms. In Emma's room, Diane noted the blend of new and old, the modern desk where she did homework, alongside the carefully preserved photos and mementos of her grandmother. "I see you've maintained connections to their past," she commented approvingly. "That's important." "We talk about their grandmother often," Michael said. "We've started cooking from her recipe book on Sundays. It's become a tradition." In the backyard, Liam proudly showed off the vegetable garden they had planted together, another tradition, borrowed from their life with their grandmother. "Carrots take forever," he informed Diane seriously, "but radishes are super fast. Back in the living room, Diane completed her notes before addressing the children directly. "I'd like to speak with each of you privately for a few minutes. Who wants to go first?" Liam volunteered, following Diane to the study. When they returned, his expression was relaxed, even pleased with himself. Emma went next, her straight shoulders and measured steps betraying her lingering anxiety. While they were gone, Michael knelt beside Liam. "Everything okay in there?" he asked quietly. Liam nodded. "She asked if I feel safe here, and if I want to stay with you forever." His voice dropped to a whisper. I said yes to both. When Emma and Diane returned, the social worker gathered her materials. "Well, Mr. Parker, I'll be submitting my final report this afternoon. The court date remains set for next Thursday at 10. "And your recommendation?" Michael couldn't help asking, though he knew she wasn't obligated to share it. Diane glanced at the children, then back to Michael. "My official recommendation will be in the report, but off the record." She allowed a small smile. "I think you've created something remarkable here, Mr. Parker. These children are thriving." After she left, Emma released a long breath. "So that's it? We just wait until Thursday?" "That's it," Michael confirmed. "But we don't have to just wait. I was thinking we could drive up to the lake this weekend. The weather's supposed to be perfect for hiking." Liam's enthusiasm was immediate, but Emma had one more question. "What about your job interview? Isn't that on Saturday?" Michael had been selective about employment opportunities, focusing only on positions that would allow him the flexibility to be present for the children. A consulting role with a sustainable energy firm had made it to final round interviews. "I rescheduled," he said. "Some things are more important." The words, once so foreign to his productivity-obsessed mindset, now came naturally. His priorities had realigned completely. The lake house weekend provided a welcome distraction from the anticipation of the court hearing. They hiked forest trails, skipped stones on the water's surface, and roasted marshmallows over a fire pit. For perhaps the first time, Emma allowed herself to fully relax, even joining in when Liam initiated an impromptu water fight. Watching her laugh, really laugh, without restraint or calculation, Michael felt a swell of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. These moments of pure joy were hard-won, emerging gradually from the soil of consistency, patience, and unwavering commitment. On Thursday morning, they dressed in their court clothes, Michael in a suit less formal than his old corporate attire, Liam in khakis and a button-down that he tolerated with minimal fidgeting, Emma in a simple dress she had selected herself. The courtroom was less intimidating than Michael had feared. Judge Harriet Coleman had a reputation for fairness in family court matters and a particular commitment to keeping siblings together when possible. Catherine met them in the hallway, her confidence boosting their spirits. "Ms. Reeves's report is excellent," she whispered to Michael, "and we have support statements from the children's teachers, their pediatrician, and the child welfare advocate. The opposition to your guardianship has been completely discredited. I'm feeling very positive." The proceedings moved more quickly than anticipated. Judge Coleman reviewed the case file thoroughly, asked several pointed questions about Michael's employment situation and support systems, and then invited Emma and Liam to approach the bench privately. Their conversation was brief, but appeared earnest, with the judge leaning forward to listen carefully to their responses. When they returned to their seats, Emma squeezed Liam's hand reassuringly. "Having reviewed all relevant documentation and testimony," Judge Coleman announced, "I find it in the best interest of Emma and Liam Wilson to grant permanent guardianship to Michael Parker, with a path to formal adoption should all parties wish to pursue that option in the future." She smiled, the first break in her judicial demeanor. "It's clear to this court that a genuine family bond has formed here, one worthy of legal recognition and protection." With a final tap of her gavel, it was official. They were a family, not by blood but by choice, commitment, and love, that had grown steadily through challenges and small daily kindnesses. Outside the courthouse, Catherine hugged each of them before departing for another case. Michael knelt to eye level with the children, his children now in every way that mattered. "So," he said, his voice thick with emotion, What would you like to do to celebrate? Liam immediately suggested ice cream, but Emma had a different idea. Could we go back? She asked quietly. To where we first met, the bakery. Michael understood the significance of her request immediately. Of course. An hour later, they stood on the same sidewalk where Emma had offered her shoes in exchange for food. The October chill had given way to spring warmth, flowers blooming in planters along the street. It feels like a lifetime ago, Emma murmured, looking at the bakery's cheerful storefront. I was so scared that day. You were brave, Michael corrected gently, the bravest person I'd ever met. They went inside, ordering cake slices to share at a small table by the window. As they ate, Liam chatted about his science project and the soccer team he'd joined, his earlier worries about the court completely forgotten in the simple pleasure of celebration. Emma was quieter, reflective. Finally, she set down her fork and looked directly at Michael. Thank you, she said simply, for keeping your promise. Michael reached across the table, squeezing her hand gently. Always. As they left the bakery, Liam ran ahead to examine a display in a nearby toy store window. Emma paused, looking down at the sidewalk. This is where I stood, she said softly. Right here. Michael nodded, remembering the determined girl with the worn shoes and unflinching gaze. You changed. My life that day, you know. Emma glanced up, surprised. I did? Completely. I thought I had everything figured out, what success looked like, what mattered. You showed me how wrong I was. A small smile curved her lips. You changed our lives too. As they walked back to the car, Michael noticed Emma slow her pace. Her attention caught by something on the ground. She bent down, picking up a small pink hair clip, dusty but intact. Someone lost this, she said, examining it carefully. Michael expected her to set it aside or perhaps pocket it, but instead, she looked around until she spotted a community bulletin board outside a coffee shop. She walked over and carefully pinned the hair clip to the board's edge where its owner might find it. The simple act of consideration, of seeing a need and responding to it without hesitation, embodied everything that had brought them to this moment. Michael felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly took his breath away. Ready to go home? He asked when she rejoined them. Emma's smile was answer enough, open and genuine, no longer guarded. Yes, let's go home. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, they returned to the courthouse. This time they were accompanied by family court attorney Diane Wong, formerly Michael's corporate attorney Catherine, now his wife, and the children's stepmother. The adoption proceedings were brief, a formality after the successful guardianship. When the judge pronounced them legally a family, Liam whooped with unrestrained joy, and even Emma allowed tears of happiness to fall. Outside, amid hugs and photographs, Emma pulled something from her pocket, a small velvet pouch she handed. To Michael. What's this? He asked. Open it, she urged. Inside was a keychain with a handcrafted charm, a tiny pair of shoes made from clay, painted and glazed with careful detail. To remember, Emma said simply. Michael didn't need to ask what she meant. The shoes that had been offered in exchange for food had become the symbol of their beginning, of dignity in desperate circumstances, of the courage to ask for help, of the profound connection that can form in the most unexpected moments. That evening they celebrated with a family dinner at home, Diane setting out dishes, while Michael and the children worked together on the final preparations. As they gathered around the table, Michael looked at the faces of his family and marveled at the journey that had brought them here. I have something to say, Emma announced as they finished dessert. I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up. And what's that? Diane asked, genuinely curious. I want to be a family lawyer, Emma said with characteristic determination, to help kids stay with their brothers and sisters, to find them good homes. Michael nodded, unsurprised by her choice. You'd be excellent at that. I know it's a lot of school, Emma continued, and it's expensive. We'll figure it out, Michael assured her. That's what families do. Later, after the children had gone to bed, Michael stood in the doorway of Emma's room watching her peaceful sleep. On her bedside table sat the small music box that had been her grandmother's, alongside a photograph of their newly formed family taken at the courthouse. Old and new, past and present, loss and discovery, all coexisting in this brave girl's life in all their lives. His phone buzzed with a message from a colleague at the consulting firm asking about a project deadline. Once, such messages would have sent him immediately to his laptop, working into the night to maintain his reputation for reliability. Now he silenced the phone and slipped it into his pocket. The work would wait until morning. This moment, this quiet, perfect moment of family peace, would not. In the hallway, he paused at a framed drawing Liam had made, titled My Family. 4 stick figures stood hand in hand beside a house with an impossibly large sun shining above them. Beneath the childish artwork, Liam had carefully printed the words, "Some families you're born into. Some families you find." Out of the mouths of babes, Michael thought, smiling as he headed downstairs to join Diane on the porch swing. The evening air carried the scent of approaching rain and the distant laughter of neighborhood children enjoying the last minutes of outdoor play. Ordinary moments that had once seemed inconsequential to Michael now formed the rich tapestry of a life he had never imagined for himself. A life measured not in quarterly reports or profit margins, but in bedtime stories, scraped knees, homework, help, and countless small acts of love. A life that began with a pair of worn shoes, offered with dignity by a child who had nothing else to give but her trust. Dear listeners, we hope you've been moved by Michael, Emma, and Liam's journey from strangers to family. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most profound connections begin in the most unexpected moments, when we open our hearts to possibilities we never imagined. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Your support helps us continue bringing these emotional journeys to life. For more stories that explore the beautiful complexity of chosen families, check out our special playlist by clicking the link on the left. We've carefully curated stories that will touch your soul, just as this one did. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which moment resonated with you most. Until our next story,